we definitely focus on your dream builders, because at the end of the day, none of that matters if we don't have a strong team, right? We don't get to the championship without teamwork.
Hire a sales trainer who is going to audit our sales processes. Why? Are we bad at selling? We're not. But we're the ones who created the system. I want to know what's broken in it that we're not even seeing because we're the creators. Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast. And I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel. And the reason for that is my mission and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me, and hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you. Welcome to another episode of Grow Law Firm Podcast. I have an amazing guest with me here today, Rosa of Rosa LLC. I really love your business slogan, legal assistance at its best. And that's the company slogan. But your personal slogan is the CEO paralegal, which really caught my attention. And whenever we bring people onto this podcast, if they're serving the industry, I always want to know whether their business helps their clients, law firm owners, increase revenue or optimize costs, or do both in order to maximize profitability. And before we got the camera rolling, you told me, well, it's really both. And I think most of the people who listen to this podcast, they're really keenly interested in, hey, how do I make this into a better business? How do I increase my revenue, lower or optimize my expenses, and thus make it more profitable? Because to me, and to so many others, whether they put it into words or not, better business usually equals better life, as long as health and family and everything else is okay. Better business, better life. Worse business, not such a great life. So, Rosa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sasha. Thank you so much for that information and for that kind of intro. But yeah, I find it really interesting that no one really focuses on what I focus on, right? Like when I was looking to open up my business after I was a litigating paralegal for over 15 years, I said, what does the legal industry need? I didn't want to leave the legal industry. And I said, what in my 15-year trajectory of being a full-time litigating paralegal, going to trials and attending mediations and preparing these lawyers for ultimately the win, right? Because that's what we go for. I said, what are we missing, right, in this industry that nobody can offer at this point? And that's exactly what I did 7 years ago. I established Rosa LLC, and I provided that gap because there was plenty of consultants out there, plenty of business managers, and plenty of human resource departments out there that attempt to do what I do, but are not able to communicate it or do it effectively, because I focus on what matters the most and the heartbeat of the law firm, which is the staff, right? Because the staff are, what I was telling you, are our dream builders. And that's something that's a lot of business people, even my mentors and people that I reached out to while I was growing my skills in this, do not focus on. They go straight to HR. They do all the team building on HR. They look at the finances and look at the reporting and look at the data. And although that's very imperative to what we do, we miss the mark when it says, okay, let's translate that back to the staff. Because if they don't know what's going on up here, then they're not going to be able to implement that at the end. And then we lose the communication and we create bigger gaps. And then we get frustrated with our paralegals because they're not, meeting the deadlines or meeting productivity. Or we get frustrated with our managers because we're not meeting the numbers that we need to meet. And that's all because of the miscommunication and happening between those departments.
So what is the number 1, 2, and possibly 3 problems that you help your law firm clients solve? And how does those problems, and in turn, how do those solutions help them improve profitability?
Yeah, absolutely. So, great question, by the way. What I love to do, and this is my thing, I call myself a people person, right? And the reason why I got the CEO in me was because I was a CEO. I was a CEO at a law firm, multi-billion dollar law firm. So I understand the difference between the C-suite and the staff members, right? And so it can all boil down to I can list all the things you want me to. I can, missing the deadlines, caseload management. There's plenty of red flags that really create those bottlenecks. But at the end of the day, it's all about miscommunication. We're not treating our staff members the way they need to be treated, and we're not training them and providing them the tools that they need in order to be more effective and obviously more productive. Because at the end of the day, productivity is what brings you the revenue that you're looking for. As the faster we can get these cases out the door, the easier it will be, the faster we get the money and the more we can bring on, right? So with scaling and growing, that's really where they miss the mark. All about miscommunication. So for me, I was the paralegal partnership. I spoke C-suite and I spoke paralegal, and I put them all both together and I said, if we can't do this together, we're not going to be able to get to the championship, and we're not going to be able to build this goal or dream or success, however you want to label it, at the end of the day. So by doing that, we provide process development training, right? Because sometimes, a lot of times, I want to say, the directors, attorneys, managers, C-suite, whomever it is that is in charge of the law firm, they create processes on a notion, on an idea of what they feel is going to progress and scale the law firm. Unfortunately, they miss the mark because they're not communicating that back to the people that are actually going to implement that process and possibly have a lot more input and insight in that process, because they're the ones that are working day in and day out with the clients. They're the ones that are working day in and day out with the software and the platforms and the integrations that you're going to implement without having any input for the staff. So that's my number one, I guess, red flag would be you need to communicate that to your staff. Whatever changes you're going to make, your staff meetings need to have an agenda. You can't just be like, so how's everybody feeling today? Because nobody's feeling great and no one's going to say that if you're having these bottlenecks. If you see your highest productivity person decline in productivity, there's a flaw in the system. There's something going on. These are red flags that you need to look for. If you're missing deadlines, that's a big no-no in law. We don't do that. We don't miss deadlines. What's going on? These are definitely red flags that you need to be looking out for, because that's not only going to decrease productivity, it's going to decrease your bottom line.
Well, let me pause you right here. I just want to make sure that I understand. So the focus is developing highly optimized internal processes that are wrapped in proper communication between different stakeholders, attorneys and paralegals, for example, because they are a team, right?
Yes.
They're not employer and subordinate, they are a team. When both sides work well, and when both sides work well together and you have optimized processes, they're going to be able to produce more in terms of revenue and
Mm-hmm.
deliver higher profitability because they're going to be able to handle more because there are fewer, I don't usually curse on this podcast, fewer screw ups.
I love it.
Major
Yeah.
screw ups, right? Because major screw ups happen in law quite often. People can typically, put a little something over that doo doo that happens, but they know that time, energy, and in turn money was wasted because the process was not optimized. So my understanding is that the number one thing that you help law firms solve, large and small, is process optimization to improve profitability. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely. You got it hit right on the nail. That's exactly what we do.
Okay, it's really, really important to understand, right? And here's how I look at it. So I have a somewhat sizable, fairly sophisticated business with dozens of employees. And the one thing that I repeat to myself on a daily basis is that the largest room in the world is room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think that any of my processes are optimal. I think that there is always a better way to do this. My business partner looks at things exactly the same way. Every manager that we have looks at it exactly the same way. And we solicit feedback from our, what you refer to as frontline people, so that they also give us ideas how to improve on things. I just finished reading a book with a fascinating title, How to Make a Few $1 billion. Really caught my attention at an airport. The guy who wrote it is absolutely the most legit author of a book with that title, because in the last 44 years, he didn't start one, two, three, four. He started 5 companies. All of them became multi-billion-dollar companies.
Wow.
He is a unicorn. Usually, like if you have that kind of a success, you run that one business and you run it forever. The guy built from scratch 5 businesses that ended up doing multi-billion-dollars each. So he talks about in his ginormous businesses how they, C-suite in multi-billion-dollar companies, communicate back and forth between frontline people to understand what they can do better. In fact, he says that whenever we buy another company, and he buys a lot of companies, I think over the 44-year tenure, he bought over 500 companies, sizable
Mhm.
companies. He said that whenever we buy a company, we ask employees on different levels, question of like, what is it that we should be doing better? And what is it we would be crazy to change? So what is it that we do really well, and what is it that we could do better? He's like, and we're looking at all this data and we're making improvements based on those inputs. So their goal is to optimize their processes, and that's exactly what you do for law firm owners. You
Yes.
optimize their process so that they could maybe not make a few $1 billion, but make millions over years and do so with less stress. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. Especially if you're looking to scale and go overseas or do nationwide. It's very crucial. I learned, my mentor actually taught me that create a process that works, that's replicable, where you can continue to do the same process over and over again. And the base of that process, it's kind of like the McDonald's effect, right? Everybody talks about McDonald's and the E Myth and all the big ones over there. But
Sure.
unfortunately, that's only going to take you so far, especially with law. It's unpredictable. It can change on the dime. In Florida, they just had a major tort reform, like last year. Understanding that these can affect the way you do business is imperative to understand that change is inevitable. Growth is optional. So we need to make sure that your process actually
I love that.
grows. You know what I mean? Your
Yeah.
process is actually growing with the current narrative. COVID, we would have never predicted COVID, right? Understanding that there's just things out of our control, but if we have a strong process and a strong team, we can survive anything.
That's super interesting. I think that there are major trends that can actually make a lot of law firms exposed and less likely to survive. My thinking always, whenever you're facing a trend that's actually headwind, it's not in your direction, not in the direction that you're moving. And I think legal businesses, legal industry will soon be facing a headwind.
Hmm.
And it will become, and here's the reason why. So in Arizona, you can now buy a law firm. You don't have to be a lawyer. So there is another state, and I think it's Colorado, that's going through that change. And soon enough, other states will follow. Like
Yes.
why have states been so protectionist toward one type of industry? It's just one industry where you have to be an attorney to own a business. That makes absolutely no sense. It is
Yeah,
protectionist at its purest.
absolutely.
It's going to change. Lawyers were able to lobby state governments for a very long time. It's going to change. What's
I
going to
mean,
happen?
paralegals are even being sworn in to the bar now. I
Correct.
believe it was Arizona as well. And so that was an
Correct.
interesting topic for me and my
Uh,
branch. And
I
I
bet.
received a lot of inquiry on that.
I bet it's very similar to the medical field where physician assistant that doesn't
Mhm.
have an MD but has a PA after their name can do most of the things
Right.
that the doctor that they're working under can do, which makes doctor not that important. So law firms, legal industry is going to face numerous headwinds. One of
Yes.
them is you're going to see private equity rolling up law firms, meaning they're going to buy a few law firms in one state, and then they're going to have a much bigger marketing and advertising budget than the players that are still there. And they're going to be able to attract better and more cases than you will, number one. So that regulatory change is going to lead to that.
Yeah.
Paralegals being able to do more And AI coming in and doing so much of the legal work is
Yes.
probably going to result in lowering of what you can charge for cases.
Yeah.
Whereas for a short time, and that time could be still measured in years, cost of client getting advertising costs are not going to come down, because when things get a little bit tougher, people start spending more and sometimes above reasonable amounts to get that business to survive. So client acquisition costs or case acquisition costs are going to go up. All of
Absolutely.
this said, I always think the bigger you become before you're seeing real headwinds, the
Yeah.
higher the probability that you're going to not just survive, but thrive through whatever comes your way. So getting your operations, getting your BP's business processes right, and that's what we talked about for the last few minutes, is of paramount importance.
Yes. Especially if you're trying to survive this new wave. COVID had opened and unlocked a lot of doors that we didn't even dream of. I remember when I was just doing freelance paralegal services, and everybody's like, what do you mean? What does that mean? I mean, 1099 paralegals, they started talking about NDAs, non disclosures, and consent forms, and this and that. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm still working within your system. I'm just not physically in the office.
Yep.
And then COVID comes along. Well, I was already set up. I already had Zoom. I already had everything that everybody was trying to say. I was already running trainings and workshops virtually. For me, it wasn't a different concept. It was the new way, right? So innovative thinking, thinking ahead. Another thing that we miss the mark at law firms, which I don't know why, because we should not be thinking this way. We should be thinking a law firm, like you were saying, as a business, is we need to be proactive, not reactive. Law firms should have never shut down. This was something that they needed to prepare for years, decades, but they didn't. They chose to stay in the traditional way. And unfortunately, if you stay in the traditional way, you're going to become a blockbuster, right? Because Blockbuster chose not to innovate. Netflix came right in and became the monster, business that they are. Amazon started with selling physical books, but then they realized, hey, not everybody likes to read a book. Maybe they want to listen to it. Maybe they want to see it on a tablet. And they started innovating. Every business out there that you see that has tested, that has lasted the test of time is because they're innovating. Why McDonald's is not a high-end restaurant? Why are they still around? Because you get the same product every time, no matter where you are in the world. Consistency and resilience is just the way you need to have your business in order to thrive.
Yeah, they have also been very innovative since 1950s when they started. So innovation
Yes,
actually drove that growth. I
absolutely.
was smiling because when you said Blockbuster, I realized, just knowing the demographics of people who listen to this podcast, there is probably 22% of listeners who will probably not know what you're talking
Oh
about.
no. Probably. And that's what I'm saying, right? We don't want
They will
that. We don't
not. They
want your
will
law
not
firm to
know
be a
what.
blockbuster.
They will not know what Blockbuster is or was rather. So, but there used to be, for those of you who do not know, there used to be a company that used to rent videotapes, wow, DVDs. You couldn't get a movie online. You had to go somewhere and pick up that movie, physical thing, and
Yes.
then pop it into
It was
your
just like the library.
machine. Yeah, it was like a library, right? So they didn't innovate, so they died. A lot of companies that didn't innovate died or shrunk.
Yes.
I believe I understand the foremost reason why so many law firms either not innovating at all or
Mm.
are under innovating. And I think it has to do with the org chart of a typical small-ish law firm. I'm not talking about the solo, but I'm talking about most common type of law firms, which I believe are 2 to 10 attorneys.
Mm.
There is no, in vast majority of those law firms and vast majority of our client base, we're in marketing business, are those 2 to 10. Some larger, I don't think we have any solos. Some substantially larger, but those small, 2 to 10, there is no actual CEO who is in charge of the business.
Yeah.
There could be a managing partner, a managing principal, but if you ask them how much time they're spending on cases,
Mm.
they will tell you anywhere between 40 and 100% of my time.
Yeah. Or how many cases do they have?
Right.
That's just a more
How many
simple,
cases? Right.
question.
So as soon as the CEO is also the specialist, the legal specialist, being a lawyer, you have no time to think about the grand scheme of things and
Yeah.
look at where the industry is heading and what technology should be adopted. A little over a year ago, I had an attorney from Clio, Joshua Lennon. If you want to look up this episode, it's going back to about October of 2022, so about a year and a half ago.
Mm.
Um, he was on this podcast, and Joshua told me something that when most people adopt Clio, their billings increase by 30%
Hmm.
because they simply learned software. And they asked him, what's the utilization rate of Clio? And he said it's under 30%, meaning you have this piece of technology that can do so many different things. And people usually use a small fraction, not a tiny, but a small fraction of that thing, and they can increase their billings by 30%. I think the
Yes.
truth of the matter is most of us small business owners, when you do not have hundreds of employees, we're still a little bit of specialists. And because we're either a little bit or a lot specialists, right? There is no time for innovation. There is no time to focus on business growth. It's just one of the things that we kind of sort of do as another hat that we wear. And because of that, most small law firms, I don't know if
Yeah.
this is the real stats or not. I had another guest who's a very prominent former law firm. He's still a law firm owner. He just doesn't practice law anymore. Very successful law firm, 50 plus million and growing very quickly. And now he does consulting. And he said that 0.37% of all law firms will reach $10 million in revenue or greater. It's less than half percent. And I think it's just a symptom of the fact that whoever's in charge of law firms, they're not really focused on growth. But people like you, people like my team, many other vendors are there to help you grow. So if you're listening to this and you've been sitting on sidelines and thinking about how do I do this, how do I improve on that, um, hire consultants, hire other people who will help you get those things done a lot quicker. I'm a huge fan of hiring consultants on periodic basis. An
Yeah.
example, I just asked my assistant to find a new to us sales trainer. And I'm like, hire a sales trainer who is going to audit our sales processes. Why? Are we bad at selling? We're not. But we're the ones who created the system. I want to know what's broken in it that we're not even seeing because we're the creators.
Right.
So I think the same thing applies to what you do and how you help law firm. But anyway,
Absolutely.
what's a typical
And
size of
back
your
to your
client?
Clio, back to your Clio example, and not to cut you off, but that really intrigues me because part of what we do is analyze the process, right? So that's the first thing we do. Like our
Mhm.
intake is pretty extensive, and we analyze what you already have, right? Because what happens is, like you said, they'll probably purchase this monster of a software, but only utilize about 5% of it. And unfortunately, that's not a good thing for business, especially if it has integrations where you can integrate all your other software, such as Office 365, such as Veritex, which is like a tech, like a text messaging company. You can even do process serving through there. They have the company Proof that integrates with MyCase. I mean, there is plenty of software out there that integrates with multiple actual other software. So putting everything in one is wonderful. Why would you want to work in like multiple places? And if everything can communicate together, wouldn't it be nice if you could just open up your case and understand where your caseload is? Right? Or run a report and see how many cases you have in litigation or in intake or, so on and so forth. So really processing and automizing is super simple when you have a software that can do all of it.
Yeah. Do you help your law firm clients to optimize those things as well?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, we are Clio consultants. We actually are partners with Clio and we also do MyCase. We're MyCase specialists, I think is what they call them. I don't think
Mhm.
they call them consultants, but yeah, so we specialize in certain softwares where we've actually gone through the training and know all the integrations and everything like that. So we can better provide that service for our law firms.
Great. So we talked about point A, what it looks like when you have a somewhat dysfunctional team with broken processes. What does point B look like? Imagine that somebody hired your firm, and I'm not making this a plug for your company, but I'm
No.
just saying okay, so here's where a lot of law firms are when they come to you, and
Yeah.
what does the end point really look like? What's the difference there?
I'm going to quote my actual attorney. We just finished consulting with her and her firm, and she has a business around 10 plus. And
10
what she
plus
told
million or
me,
10 plus attorneys?
attorneys,
Mhm.
and I go to her and I said, "So how do you feel?" And she said, "I feel free." So the problem is that a lot of our lawyers or our clients that own these law firms are not able to take a vacation, right? Or have that time with their family because they're so involved
True.
in the law firm. And I'm talking about an attorney that has a manager. I mean, she has full staff, between all the staff, they have 60 plus staff members in addition to the 10 attorneys. So it's not that she doesn't have she didn't have the capability. Is that one, she wasn't using the software to its full capacity. So we helped her integrate with her process server. We helped her integrate everything, text messaging with the clients, putting that in there. All the information is captured, all of that, right? So the end game, and like my client said, is being free, being able to just do what you need to do, be that person again, and still have your firm running, right? So in her case, we were able I believe it was 6 months, and don't quote me on that. I believe it was, though. In 6 months, we were able to increase her productivity and her profits by 45% from the time that we started to the time that we ended. So I will follow up with her in another 6 months and see what happens from there. But seeing
Let's
those
quantify it for a
numbers.
second. I'm super
Yeah.
curious about those numbers. So 60 employees, 10 attorneys. If you don't mind
Yeah.
sharing like a ballpark, what was their gross revenue?
Um, well, I don't know. I didn't have permission from her. So I
So
can, I can.
let's do a simple math. Let's say
Okay.
that they're fairly well optimized law firm as far as revenue goes per full-time attorney. Let's
Yes.
say that it's like
Five.
$500,000
Yes, exactly.
per full-time attorney. So 500,000
Yes.
times 10 attorneys
Yes.
makes it a $5 million law firm.
Yes.
Not a big outfit. In
No.
fact, the numbers suggest that they were not very profitable when you started, and here's why. 60 employees.
Yeah.
Take 5 million, divide by 60, and you get approximately
Yeah.
85,000,
Maybe.
87,000 per full-time employee, which if all of them are based in US,
Hmm.
they're not doing well financially.
No, because she offers benefits and, they're W-2 employees.
Of
Yeah.
course. So my sense, just based on these rough numbers, is that she was probably losing money or
Yes.
very close losing money. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
So
her personal, yeah, her
yeah,
profit. Yeah. Hmm.
well, so there was no profit,
No.
right? And she probably actually had to put some money in
Hmm.
operating at that rate. And here's why. If you're operating a business, service business in the US,
Yeah.
where today average W-2 employee in the professional business probably cost you 75 grand, probably
Absolutely.
at the bare minimum. You have to add another 29% of whatever you're paying them to make it a full cost of that employee. So from
Yes.
75,000, you're looking at 100,000. 60 employees, including her, I assume, that's $6 million in cost, give or take, plus some other overhead. So she
Yeah.
should have been losing really decent money. She probably may have like a rainmaker or two that they're making up for those losses by bringing in more revenue, but
Hmm.
that's not a profitable business. It's a struggle with
Yeah.
59 employees,
Yes.
which her life was not easy. And now you brought her that freedom by optimizing process and thus
Yeah.
improving profitability.
Yeah.
Bravo. That's awesome. I like hearing scenarios like that one because
Yeah,
they
and
just make so much sense.
she's also a mom, right? So it's very and she's the breadwinner of the family. So it was, I feel like our service is not only needed, it's warranted, right? Because we want to provide, like, nobody comes to business to break it down, right? You're thinking
Hmm.
you're doing great, and then I come in and I show you the numbers, and it's like, ouch, I didn't even think about that. Our relationship with money, it's very dependent on our upbringing, right? And how we learned about money and how to manage money. So when I come in and I give you a different perspective and I literally run the numbers for you and be like, no, you're not doing as great as you think you are,
Right.
because you continue to hire thinking that that's what you need, but now you're just adding additional cost to your firm when you could just be a lot more productive and automate and do this and do all the things. We cut cost, like we had to. I'm like, you have to cut cost so that your producers can produce,
Yeah.
like it just all has to, the puzzle has to come together at the end of the day. And unfortunately, I come in with a different perspective. out of the box thinking, providing team building, and doing all the things that we know that we love to do, but we also know it like the back of our hand. It's not something that we need to Google, and YouTube University and all of that stuff that comes along with trying to figure it out on your own.
So
So
in this specific case, once you optimize process, I understand it was 6 months term from start to finish. You
yes,
optimize process. When you say she had to cut costs, I assume she cut overhead by reducing the number of full-time employees that she had. Is that correct?
absolutely. Yes, she had a lot too many intake people. Yeah.
So how many employees did she shed?
At the end of the day, it was around 6 employees that we cut down.
So 10% of the workforce,
Yeah.
did their revenue go down at all because they lost 6 full-time salaries?
Nope.
This is what we talk about when we talk about optimizing processes. She had 6 full-time employees. I'm going to call it at least $600,000 a year in overhead
Yes.
that she did not need. She didn't
No.
know it. That's why I like to hire consultants who know what they're talking about, because they're always free,
Yeah.
right? I bet she did not pay you $600,000 for this project, but
I
she
wish that would have
realized
been nice.
that would be nice. But she paid you a fraction of that, and in return, she got, let's say she paid you 60,000. I don't think she did, but if she paid you 6,000, her return on investment was 10x and instant,
Absolutely.
right? Because you helped her optimize processes. She had 6 full-time employees that were not needed there in the first place. Now she knows how much money she wasted over the years. Voila.
Yeah, we did that too.
You did it. Was it like really really painful?
It was really heartbreaking. I felt bad. She even cried. I felt bad.
She cried.
Yeah, well, because that's the thing, right? We don't look at the law firm as a business. And when you run the data and you run the reports and you capture accurate data,
Yeah.
right? Because this is not just theory. Oh, it
Yeah.
should only take a paralegal 5 to 10 minutes to draft the motion. Well, is that accurate? What type of motion? Are we talking about a motion for summary? Are we talking for an extension? Like, does it really take 5 minutes? Like,
Yeah.
capturing accurate data is
Mm-hmm.
essential to your growth and productivity, right? So understanding that and putting those implementations is just necessary at this point.
100%. So if you're listening to this, here's my plug for Eda Rosa. Look her up. What's your URL for your website?
EdaRosaLLC.com.
Okay, EdaRosaLLC.com. We're going to put a link in the description of the video. Reach out to her. I'm sure you could do a quick consult where you'll probably start just talking about these numbers, right?
Yes.
And just as I diagnose things on the fly, and I'm like, wait, 60 employees on $5 million? Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Right? You'll be able to do the same thing very quickly, and then you will see how engaging a consultant, high-end consultant like Eda, would be really free and would deliver a high ROI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Eda, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for all the insights.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.